Now, when I was in Alberta, I actually spent a couple days with took a break with a family, Chinese-Canadian friend, who said, Ezra, how would you feel if it was called Jewish virus? Would you be happy about a book like that? I have in my hand here, did anyone go through this while I was away? Did anyone go through this on the show? No. Okay, so this here is the actual hand-signed letter that I was given. You can see the envelope, and it was handed to my lawyer, Taylor Thiessen. Got a lot of lawyers. And I'll just read some of it. I read some of this on a little live stream I did. Attention, Mr. Ezra Levant. China virus, how Justin Trudeau's pro-communist ideology is putting Canadians in danger. On behalf of my clients, more than 20 Chinese associations in Canada, I am writing this letter of protest in relation to the choice of title of your most recent book. The title is one of a book's first impressions on the readers, and it should be interesting, gripping, and relevant to its elements, and also be mindful of its implications on the communities in the public domain. Unfortunately, we find your book title irrelevant to its core content, and rather discriminatory and racist in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, I want to let you know that none of them read the book. At least none that I asked said they read the book. So how do they know that the title doesn't relate to the contents of the book? I'm here to tell you it does. And I say that because I not only read the book, I wrote it. World Health Organization also issued best practices for the naming of new human infectious diseases in 2015 already, and advised directly, quote, disease names may not include geographic locations, cities, countries, regions, continents, etc. Well, okay, the World Health Organization is a United Nations creature that is dominated by communist China, and I'm a free person. I could say whatever I want. I chose the title China virus because the virus came from China, but because the real virus I'm talking about in the book is the Communist Party of China, and as you can see by the picture of Justin Trudeau on the cover, I'm just going to read the subtitle again, how Justin Trudeau's pro-communist ideology is putting Canadians in danger. Now, when I was in Alberta, I actually spent a couple days with took a break with a family, Chinese-Canadian friend, who said, Ezra, how would you feel if it was called Jewish virus? Would you be happy about a book like that? All right, good point. I wouldn't. But that implies that the virus is of a particular religion or faith. China is a country. Chinese is a language, Chinese is an ethnicity, but China is a country from which it came. We're not saying Christian virus or Jewish virus. I understand. I can understand how this is, you know, if you were a Chinese Canadian, you'd feel sort of tense perhaps, but this is not Chinese Canadian virus, it is China. Now, I have some friends in the States, Raheem Kassam and his mentor, Steve Bannon, who emphasize CCP virus, Chinese Communist Party virus. And I know that's the preferred nomenclature of the Epoch Times. They don't say China virus or Chinese virus. That's a Trumpism, which is one of the reasons I chose it. They say CCP virus. I hope that catches on, but I think 95% of people don't know what CCP is. They just don't. You've got to be pretty deep into politics to know that CCP is Chinese Communist Party. I get it. They're trying to distinguish, again, between the Communist Party, the Soviet Union, and the ordinary Russian. And I do that at some length in the book. I support Chinese democracy activists. I have a whole section in here defending Chinese democracy activists against abuses by the Chinese Communist Party in Canada. So I can understand. I mean, a friend of mine said, Ezra, how would you feel if it was called the Jewish virus? I wouldn't like a book with that title. But that is not what this is called. It's after the country. And I explain immediately. I mean, listen, I understand why it's spicy. It's a provocative title. But of course it's not racist. China is not a race. It's a country. Back to the letter. In the face of a public health crisis where misconceptions and racial hate crimes are surging, such insensitive and misleading title, again, she didn't even read the book, could create unconscious bias and further fuel discrimination and xenophobia against people of Chinese descent. It is disheartening to see that you and your media network chose this term as the title of a book amid this pandemic, which appears to be nothing but trying to capitalize on media and public attention. It is extremely irresponsible and unprofessional in nature and does not align with Canadians' core value enshrined in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I know she hasn't read the book, but I wonder if she's read the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, because Section 2B is freedom of speech. 2A is freedom of thought, belief. So it absolutely does. In fact, her letter threatening me is what doesn't comport with Canadian values. Our clients have made complaints to various media distribution sources who have agreed with our client that the title on this book is racist and provocative. Now, I don't know what it means that they've made complaints with media distribution sources. I don't know what that means. And that they've agreed with the client. I don't get it. We encourage you to replace this title with a more responsible and relevant title, or we will reserve our rights to file a complaint with the Alberta Human Rights Commission and Canadian Human Rights Commission. All right, well, you go ahead and do that, and we'll have another round of a teachable moment about freedom of speech and political censorship. If you don't like a book called China Virus, write your own book, write a critique of this. I think you should start by reading this. None of them there had. Is it a provocative title? Well, sure. I think if you read the book, you'll see there's a lot of terrible facts in there. The facts are what's provocative. This book would make no sense if it weren't true. If the virus came from a country other than China, this book wouldn't make any sense. If Justin Trudeau was not complicit with the Chinese Communist Party, this book wouldn't make any sense. If this book were ineffective and weak, the Chinese government would not be going to such lengths. And this lawyer, Monica Wang, I know she hasn't read the book. I'm not going to change the title. I accept that some Chinese Canadians might find the title a little bit prickly. And I offer, in response to that, my track record of supporting Chinese democracy. I think that this is a fake, an attempt to change the channel by the Communist Party of China. What's interesting to me is is the second page, which has a list of about 20 groups, most of which I've never heard of before, that this lawyer claims to represent. Chinese Overseas Petroleum Association of Canada. What's that? Are those Chinese companies pumping oil in Canada? I don't know. Calgary Jiangsu Shanghai Association. I don't know what that is. Edmonton Hubei Association. That's the province in which Wuhan is. I've actually never heard of any of these groups before. So I'll have to Google them. But it would be quite something if 20 groups had indeed canvassed their members and got instructions to retain a lawyer to send me a threat. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say they didn't. To get 20 different groups, some of which are so obscure, I'm sure they don't meet on a regular basis, to truly canvass this issue, when I don't think any of them have read the book, to instruct this lawyer, I don't believe it happened that way. I believe it was the exact opposite. I believe this letter was drafted at the request of the Chinese consulate, and these were just the names of the Beijing compliant groups that said, yeah, put my name. In fact, I don't even think they were consulted. In fact, I think if those groups are in fact even real, they don't know anything about this letter. I tell you all this because I have an actual chapter in my book where I talk about how the Chinese Communist Party still interferes with our democracy here in Canada. One of the examples in my book is there was a church in Vancouver where there was about 100 Chinese democracy activists in the church. So let me say again, these were Chinese and non-Chinese people together who were calling for more freedom and democracy for the Chinese people. So this was a pro-Chinese person group in a church, but the Beijing Communist Chinese surrounded the church, terrifying the people inside, and the police had to be sent to actually set free the people inside the church in Canada, not in Xinjiang, not in Beijing. There was a, I don't think they were armed, but there was a threatening enough mob that held the Chinese democracy activists prisoner, really, until the police came to liberate in Canada. In my book, I talk about how a Tibetan student politician was the subject of, I think, 10,000 signatures by other Chinese Communist Party foreign students in Canada denouncing her just because she was Tibetan. Like insane, racist, when you're anti-Tibetan like that, that's racist, insane, racist stuff. The Uyghur business, that's racist against Uyghurs. So yeah, I mean, I think we got some real issues going on here. That's an excerpt from a daily live stream show that I do every day at 12 noon Eastern Time. I talk about the stories of the day, play some fun videos, and most importantly, I take your questions and comments in what YouTube calls a super chat. If you like that, please tune in live. It's way more fun that way. You can join the conversation. And every day at 8 p.m., I have a special produced show with a whole monologue, and I interview guests, and I read my fan mail and my hate mail. You can learn more about both my daily live show and the nightly premium show at rebelnews.com.